What's up, everyone? Jason Gilbo here at JGilbo11, taking a look at NBA value plays for FanDuel and DraftKings. It's Friday afternoon-ish, 1 o'clock, so obviously more stuff can come out. So just to get a sense of my time frame from where I'm coming from, about 1 o'clock Eastern. Looking at Vegas tonight, Cavs are the only double-digit favorite that I see here. The rest are relatively close spreads. We're looking at games in OKC, in Sacramento, and LA to have the three highest totals on the board. No game under 200 tonight. The closest that comes to that is the Pacers and Dallas game. But obviously Dallas, given their injuries, still some value to look at there. So speaking of injuries, obviously Isaiah Thomas ruled out tonight. We saw Marcus Smart pick up the start last time. Didn't necessarily get into the minutes and 30s, but obviously had a little bit of foul trouble. Terry Rozier was playing pretty well off the bench. Both those guys are going to see the tick up in minutes. Bradley, Crowder, Horford, still guys I want exposure to tonight. Usage is, obviously Thomas was, the highest usage guy on that team. That's going to shift around to those names. So all those guys don't have bad prices. You can certainly look at them tonight in this matchup. One thing about Marcus Smart, pretty damn good defender. Kind of lowers me on, this backcourt of Toronto, but obviously given their usage and the fact that, they're the scoring threats, they're also in play. Another point guard injury, Derrick Rose, questionable for tonight. Obviously, just one guy to really pick up the slack there. Brandon Jennings, in terms of minutes, played over 30 in that blowout loss against the Cavs. Like him here against this Kings team. Obviously have slowed down the pace this year, but not a good defense still. You can definitely look at Brandon Jennings as a value option. Same thing really remains with the Lakers. I mean, Nick Young, Jose Calderon, D'Angelo Russell all out. Jordan Clarkson, Lou Williams, Marcelo Huertas is, the main beneficiaries here. Huertas played 31 minutes and put up a decent game. Obviously, 5 steals is something that's going to inflate those numbers quite a bit there. It's 10 fantasy points, but overall still played a decent game. It was a blowout, but those guys are still going to be the 3 that you pick up the most slack in that backcourt. And then also we'll talk about Brandon Ingram in a little bit. So keeping up with the backcourt injuries here, Seth Curry, JJ Barea, they remain out. Wesley Matthews, Deron Williams, I mean, they're the viable options here. You look at Williams averaging 13, 3, and 9 over his last 5 games, still in that mid-range, so a lot of upside there. Decent matchup against this Pacers team that really hasn't been that great this year defensively. Obviously, you're playing outpace as well. So, as I mentioned, that's the lowest scoring one, but obviously just a 4-point spread, so you can certainly fire away. Miami, the value remains very similar. I'm looking at that game. It's just kind of a mess because obviously we have Wayne Ellington, Rodney McGruder, who should play. He's listed as questionable, but should play. This is a team that, still a 98 team total, so they're still going to put up some points. Looking at who they roll out in terms of that starting lineup, I mean, Cavs obviously not the most optimal lineup, but given the fact that they're rolling a rotation with not many guys, it's okay to fire away. So those 2 names there should be the ones who benefit the most. Obviously, Goran Dragic, good matchup. Kyrie Irving, not the greatest defender that I'm going to be shying away from, so don't mind him. Damari Carroll played last night. Usually he's been sitting out one or the first night of back-to-back, so that would mean tonight he's likely out. Norman Powell is going to be a guy who fills in, decent punt option. Tougher matchup than last time out. Obviously, he played LA, so I'm not particularly thrilled with the matchup here, but if you want to roll him in a GPP lineup and you're looking to build multiple lineups, I don't mind it. Tim Hardaway starting for Kent Bazemore here. Hardaway hasn't really gained a ton of minutes. He's been low to mid 20s during this span. Not a particularly good fan of him tonight. I like Brandon Ingram a little bit more at the small forward position. I like some other shooting guard options, so not really looking at him. Paul Millsap expected to play tonight, but Kevin Love is questionable. Channing Frye has already been ruled out. I think you're going to see a lot of LeBron at the 4 if Love sits out. Obviously, Kyrie Irving would get a bump up if Love's out in usage. And I think you're just going to see guys like Shumpert, Dunleavy, Liggins kind of pick up some slack there. Tristan Thompson wouldn't be a bad guy to play down low either. So, those are probably the names that you're probably looking at more, given the fact that Love, if he doesn't play, LeBron's going to move over. Outside of that, though, Dwight Powell continues to be a value option with Bogut and Dirk out, 25 to 30 minutes per game, averaging 10 and 6 over his last 5. Not particularly great, but this is a guy who does have 25 to 30 fantasy point range and still relatively cheap. So Looking at a couple other value guys, I mean, I talked about Jordan Clarkson picking up some slack here, going to play big minutes. Hasn't been great. I mean, in terms of shooting the ball, he's been awful. That's always kind of been his case. His shot can just be ice cold on most nights. But good spot here against Phoenix. They rank dead last in efficiency against guards, so I don't mind that. Patrick Beverley's a guy. I mean, this is a game where you're going to be looking to get exposure to OKC Houston. A lot of upside here. Obviously the two stars, James Harden and Russell Westbrook, are probably keying in on focusing on the value tonight because maybe you want to get a couple of them in your lineup. But here, I mean, Patrick Beverley, I mean, around 30 minutes per game of late, coming off a great game against LA, averaging over 25 fantasy points per game over his last 5. I definitely don't mind him here. I mean, OKC hasn't been great against point guards. As long as he can stay out of foul trouble guarding Westbrook, I mean, he should be relatively safe. His teammate Eric Gordon, shooting over 50% from 3 and the field over his last 5 games, has been a good off-the-bench scorer. I don't mind him. The price still hasn't really come up a ton. And then we get to Brandon Ingram. I mean, he's a guy, much like Clarkson, the shot is just, has been awful for the most part, but still playing over 34 minutes per game. The attempts are still there. Walton's a guy who's going to be putting a lot of faith in him in terms of just getting him out there and getting him gain experience. So you got to like that for a cheap small forward price tag. Very high total, great matchup and an up-paced matchup against, Phoenix there. So definitely like him. Some mid-range upside here. I mean, I definitely like some of these guys. Some of them are more GPP plays. I like Kyrie if Love sits. Bledsoe at 7,400 on DK, not a bad price tag. Obviously, FanDuel is around the 8K range, so I don't mind him as kind of a cheaper option. There's a lot of guys above him, so Bledsoe kind of sits in that mid-range for me. So I don't mind them. And obviously, we talked about a lot of the shooting guards, Deron Williams, the Lakers guys, Patrick Beverley. So, point guard, Brandon Jennings. You can go on with point guard and shooting guard value right now, but some mid-range shooting guard options like Victor Oladipo had a great game against Houston last time out. Good matchup there. Definitely in that high-scoring game, he's the secondary scorer, outside of Westbrook. So, I think obviously we've seen that 40-plus fantasy point upside, and it's been relatively more and more consistent of late from Oladipo. He hasn't been dropping those duds as much, so I definitely like Oladipo. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, interesting mid-range value play, obviously some upside. Okay matchup against Minnesota. He could be a sneaky pick tonight, given the fact that there is a lot to offer at the shooting guard position. Devin Booker's the same way. The problem I have with him is the peripheral stats really lack. He's a guy who really has to draw, 30-plus real points to really come up in that 30 range. So that's kind of the one downside with him. Trevor Ariza, Jay Crowder, two kind of interesting mid-range small forward options. I like them. Crowder obviously, had his first finally good game above 30 points after we've been probably locking away with him over the last week and a half. Playing above 30 minutes. Him and Ariza, certainly in that range, decent matchup. So obviously, if DeMarre Carroll sits, which is likely, that's a bump to Jay Crowder. So certainly don't mind that. Tobias Harris, Harrison Barnes, Jabari Parker, a lot of mid-range small forward / power forward options there, sitting in that 6K range. Decent upside there for all three of those guys. Definitely don't mind them. Moving over to obviously the Kings and Knicks game out there in Sacramento. Melo and Rudy Gay are both kind of cheaper options in terms of comparison to LeBron James and Paul George. So you get a little bit of a discount, yet I don't know how much we'll really see of LeBron tonight in terms of a monster upside. We might get one of those 45 to 50 point games if especially if Love plays. If he doesn't, then maybe we can bump him up a little bit. But there is that case. So especially in that game, I mean, blowout potential, we might see it. We may not. So there's always that risk. But I do like Melo and Rudy Gay. I think there is some upside in that game. Obviously, for their price, they're one of the cheaper options outside of Porzingis and DeMarcus Cousins, who are more expensive. But decent usage for both of them. Really high total. So I mean, it's a top 3 total tonight. I'm expecting some points to go around. Definitely don't mind them. Julius Randle, he's another one here. This is a guy who, in an up-paced matchup, and we could see triple-double upside. We've seen it this season. Definitely don't mind him against this Phoenix defense that really hasn't been that great this year. Up-tempo game's going to, create a lot of upside for a lot of these players in this one, given the fact that, these guys don't really play that much defense. Moving over to center tonight, and I like center. I think there's a reasonable options here. Obviously, a GPP pick only. Jonas Valanciunas. This is a guy who now we're kind of starting to see the minutes drop back down. He's just a guy who goes missing in games and then comes back the next night and goes off for 20 and 10. Obviously, a great matchup against a bad rebounding team, a team that doesn't defend bigs down low well. So he's in play in GPPs only. Like him more on DK, where you can roster two centers. Like Clint Capella in an up-tempo matchup here, highest scoring game, and that good chance at a double-double. Still sits in that mid-range on both sides. Tristan Thompson's a viable option. Hassan Whiteside, very overrated defensive efficiency guy for me. Yes, he blocks shots. Yes, he's a presence down there. But I'm not afraid of rostering centers against the Heat. You really shouldn't be either. So I don't mind him, especially if Love sits. Good chance at a double-double there for him. Obviously, he's a guy who's really in there for rebounding, as we saw. So I definitely don't mind him at a cheaper price tag. Al Horford's another one with Isaiah Thomas. You're going to see a lot kind of run through him. Obviously, a big offensive player. Has had a couple of games. Obviously, like the game against Detroit did well. Had a game against Philly that wasn't good when everyone took him, especially coming off a big night against the Kings. So he can be a frustrating player to watch, but I think you're going to see a good, consistent performance from Horford, given the fact that there's a lot of usage up in the air. So that's going to wrap things up with the NBA value plays with DFC here. If you want to check out our cheat sheets, you can head on over to DaveMasseyCafe.com. They are out for tonight. And also you can check out the forum page, and there's, I'll be in there. Zach will be in there. We can answer some questions for you. So that's going to wrap things up, and we'll see you guys on Monday.